Let me repeat that. That 13 million barrels of oil that we import on a daily basis is half of our trade deficit on a yearly basis. And it puts us right into the middle of Middle Eastern politics, even as we are debating sending another 30,000 young men and women over there, following those thousands of others that are already in that region. And so the generals, the admirals are warning us as well. But what is the message from the Competitive Enterprise Institute? That no warning is necessary. But there is a warning that should be out. And that is that this industry may spread misinformation to keep you addicted to their product. The product was once tobacco, as those fumes were being sent into the lungs of Americans. And now we have a second product, a product that sends up a different kind of fume, but one which is completely unhealthy, not only for the citizens of our country, but for the planet. But it's the same coalition of paid-for deniers that are out trying to take a very explainable set of scientific data and to use them in a way that is trying to distract away from the central set of actions which we should be taking to create a clean job revolution in our country, to back out the imported oil, which threatens our national security and our economy, and in the bargain reduces dramatically the greenhouse gases that we send up into the atmosphere, reducing the threat of global warming and climate change. That's what their agenda is all about. That's what this fight is about. And we don't expect this to be an easy fight, because it's the same coalition that we saw in the past on tobacco and other issues. So we think that this is the kind of debate that we will win. Science is on our side. History is on our society. All of the evidence which is out in the world is on our side. Since 2001, all of the years have been in the top 10 hottest years on record. This decade is the hottest on record, beating out the 1990s by a substantial margin. Sea levels are rising. Hurricane intensity is increasing. Arctic sea ice is disappearing. Tropical diseases are reshifting northwards. Severe rainstorms are increasing. Droughts are getting stronger and more frequent. We don't need more evidence. And it's affecting our own country as we see the villages of Alaska now falling into the ocean as permafrost begins to melt. And the village of Shishmaref in Alaska is the tip of the iceberg from the perspective of the impact that it's having upon our own American citizens. So this is an important time. The Select Committee will continue to work on this issue, and I'd like to introduce other members of our committee who have been working on this issue, and begin with a recognition of the gentleman from Oregon, Earl Blumenauer, for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mercifully for you, I agree with everything that Eddie said in his very complete and eloquent statement. But I do have 3 points that I would add. First, some of you may have caught the little essay I had in the Times a few weeks ago about my near-death panel experience. I had the misfortune of authoring the end-of-life provisions in our health care bill in the House that were unanimously approved, non-controversial. Everybody agreed were positive and constructive, empowering families in some of the most difficult times. Yet we saw within literally a couple of weeks this morph into the death panels from Sarah Palin, who at one point was governor of Alaska, and started being incorporated into Republican talking points and morphed into the internet, and really became one of the rallying cries of the sort of the bizarre Tea Party activities this summer. With very powerful illustration of how people can take things that are straightforward, benign, even positive, and turn them on their heads. Well, ex-Governor Palin is at it again. Somehow has discovered some sort of smoking gun in this regard. As Mr. Markey pointed out in great detail, there is no there. And ex-Governor Palin's state has had the greatest impact in terms of global warming of any in the nation. It is absolutely critical that we not allow the same sort of death panel, swift boating to occur, to turn this critical debate on its head. For me, it was an unpleasant 3 months, but it ended up where the opponents were so over the top and outrageous that it ended up biting them. And in the end, these provisions were retained in the House legislation without controversy, and nobody spoke against them on the floor of the House. I am hopeful, if the media does its job and if we do ours, that this too will become a non-event. Unfortunately, we are facing two other developments that are a little disconcerting. Despite the work that the chairman and the committee have done for 3 years documenting the evidence, where there is no peer-reviewed evidence that suggests that we aren't in a serious problem and it is impacted by human activity. There is further evidence that even if you didn't believe it, the United States can no longer afford to waste more energy than anybody else in the world. It is not sustainable over time. We are in a situation where we will go to Copenhagen, where the United States government is no longer missing in action. In fact, our president is accepting a Nobel Prize right now, as he himself, I think, has acknowledged, not so much for what he has done in terms of actual achievement, but for re-engaging the United States and what this represents to the world community, that we're going to be players rather than on the sideline. We go to Copenhagen with the challenge of actually not only reassuring people who are concerned about the United States commitment, notwithstanding what the administration has done, but then we have to counter some of our own colleagues who should be concerned about the energy waste and the problems that face the planet, who are going to be going off on tangents that I think are the moral equivalent of the death panel debacle. Nonetheless, I look forward to it, and I hope it has the same outcome as we had last summer, where people who are so over the top create a reaction that brings us back into balance. And I look forward to being a part of that conversation.
And next, we're going to hear from the other senior member of the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming, Representative Jay Inslee from the state of Washington.
Thank you. I do have 3 points. I'm Jay Inslee. I represent the 1st District, State of Washington. First, here's what my constituents might believe. They believe that before Sarah Palin writes a book, she should try reading a few. She should read the Climate Change Impacts United States report. She should read the Climate Change 2007 Synthesis report. She should read the Analysis of Effects of Global Change on Human Health and Welfare in Human Systems. She should read the Climate Change 2000 Physical Science Basis. And most importantly, she should read the National Academy Science Report of 2007 that looked at this issue in England and concluded with 90% assurance that in fact we are heading down a very dangerous road due to human-induced climate change. There is no question about scientific consensus in this regard, and this is why this is so galling. The former vice president suggested that the former governor who quit as governor of Alaska was a denier, and her attitude was one of denial. It is worse than one of denial. It is one of defeatism. And you have to ask yourself, where does this come from if you're ignoring the clear science? It comes from an attitude of defeatism. The defeatists who we hear on the floor of the House and from Sarah Palin believe that we cannot build electric cars to solve this problem. The defeatists believe we can't build solar thermal plants to solve this problem. The defeatists believe that we can't compete with China to build a new clean energy economy. And we're going to go to Copenhagen, and the news is we're going to be undeterred of leading the nation and the world to a new clean energy economy. That's point number one. Point number two, and this really is the issue that I think is legitimately one that we all have to ask, and I've talked to some of my constituents, and I talked this morning to Dr. Ralph Cicerone. He's president of the National Academy of Sciences. And I asked him about this Contrumps, this flap in the UK. And he told me two salient points that I think are very important.